cap and tax, that's a great one. I mean, Climategate has just broken. Or basically this, I mean, we've talked about it to our viewers out there, these emails that have been released which shows that these guys have been cooking the books, these big, you know, climate research unit, okay, that everyone and Al Gore and all those other idiots that are, you know, the hoaxers out there have been basing everything on. What do you think is the impact of that, and what do you think it says about their willingness to do anything to push their agenda?
Well, what's happened is they have perverted science.
Absolutely.
And so you have to look at what they've done and understand that the scientists have brought science down by manipulating the data, or even suggesting that the data should be manipulated to come up with a preconceived political notion. That does violence to science, and that needs to be corrected.
That's not real science.
And so what you're finding now is that they are destroying their credibility. And they're destroying it at exactly the time when the world was moving forward at a pretty breakneck speed to do a lot of things that would increase the amount of control that the government has on every aspect of your life. Now, I think that part of what's going on right now is that as the people have been waking up to cap and tax, which is Barbara Boxer's baby.
Yes.
The chair of the environmental committee.
She wants to prosecute the people, and you had a great ad about this. You know, it's fantastic. I love it. That was tight. Right? Where you basically put the spotlight on her, saying that she wants to go after the people who got those emails. And I understand.
She called it climate, what was it, climate email theft gate or something like that?
Yeah.
And we hear now that it wasn't likely hackers, it was actually likely a whistleblower from the inside.
That's what I thought too. Right.
Absolutely.
It's just when you have that many emails for that long.
Oh, right. Absolutely. That was an inside job. And that's what enrages them the most, I think, is the fact that some scientist with a conscience who really wants to practice good science.
Right.
Now, what you're hearing out of it, I heard on the news today, that some of the more honest scientists are now saying, well, yeah, we need to do a better job of having other views.
How about that?
Isn't that what we've been saying for a while?
Right.
And that's the way science is supposed to work.
Right.
You don't have a consensus and then shut down debate. You know, 1,000 years ago, it was a consensus that the world was flat.
Right.
Okay, so did we shut down debate? No.
I'm a lawyer, and if your theory or your case can't withstand argumentation, then it's probably wrong.
Right.
Exactly. And that's what science is supposed to be. We heard this big thing of 10 years ago, cold fusion was going to save the world.
Right.
The problem was nobody could duplicate it.
Right, exactly, yeah. And that's the way science is supposed to work. It's supposed to be somewhat adversarial. You're supposed to challenge the views, allow papers to come up that say, well, what about this? Have you thought about the impact of volcanoes on the environment, or solar variability, or orbital mechanics? I mentioned some of these things in floor debate on the floor of the California State Assembly about 3 years ago or so, and I was ridiculed by the left-wing members of the Assembly that I would bring up things like the orbital precession, you know, where the Earth, is it spinning on its axis, kind of acts like a top, where sometimes the
wobbles.
Yeah, it does, and that affects the climate.
Variation.
And there's an 11,000-year cycle, and a 22,000-year cycle, and a 100,000-year cycle.
That's right.
These things impact the climate. Solar variability. We have had now a period of time when the sun has been more quiet, for lack of sunspots, than in any time in recorded history.
Right.
And that impacts weather.
And look, I mean, nobody's saying that well, first of all, the first environmentalist was a Republican, Teddy Roosevelt, right? We all want clean air. We all want clean water. Nobody wants to pollute stuff. The question is, and it's probably true that man's having an impact on the environment. We don't know what it is because we can't get real data. We've just been starting to take measurements for this stuff. And as you said, what we've seen, whether it's Hurricane Katrina, volcanoes, tsunami, nature is so much more powerful than we are. If we could, these guys can't even predict what's going to happen 5 days from now.
That's the interesting thing,
right?
About some of their frustrations, right? You see it in their emails. That you look at the famous hockey stick.
Oh yeah, the rigged, yeah, rigged.
And how of course that's been discredited, but how frustrated these politicized scientists.
That's what it is.
Right?
Like Ben Stein's movie.
Because they couldn't. Their models couldn't show why it wasn't continuing up like the hockey stick said it was supposed to, right? So, has man had an effect? Probably there's been some effect in there.
Right.
Then the question becomes, well, what do you do about it?
Right.
In the last
and how bad is it?
In the last 150 years, sea levels have risen 1 foot. In the next 100 years, they say maybe 1 more foot. Has civilization ended because of the sea level rise in the last 150 years? No. Do you think it'll end if we have 1 foot in 100 years? No, we will probably adapt. You know, I'm of the mind that anything that we do has to actually have an impact. And if you simply slow down American greenhouse gas emissions and offload more of our manufacturing capacity to coal-fired China and to coal-fired India,
right, and 100 years,
and then re-import the same product to America, you will end up with less jobs in America and more global greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Technology is a solution.
Right, and man adapts. That's what man is good at doing. And would you rather try to adapt out of poverty or out of wealth?
Thank you. That's what I'm saying.
If you have wealth, then you have the resources that you can use to adapt.
And developed nations, not the ones that are just going through industrial stuff, are the ones that pollute less. We're the ones that are 5 years away from electric cars, hydrogen cars, all that. Not China. That's what I'm saying.
France, 80% of nuclear power is nuclear power. They produce the most amount of goods and services for the least amount of greenhouse gas emissions of any nation.
Right.
I have introduced 5 nuclear power bills in California in the last 3 years to lift California's ban on nuclear power. We're one of only 6 states with a ban. Because if you're really serious about reducing emissions and you still want to have jobs, because obviously you need jobs
to eat,
right? Then the way you reduce emissions and have jobs is with modern nuclear power.